training program is being organized. This is the second year due to the pandemic. And because of the pandemic, we saw that many of our students are not getting internship, or they have gone through, especially now this year, they have gone through the bad phase. And therefore, we are organizing this summer training program so that to engage to give the insights of the media industry, calling the media professionals, and thereby bringing the expertise or the media profession to the students in the college for their learning. Whatever they have learned academically, to better understand, probably to get the insights of various fields. We are yesterday also we had a session, and today's session is on pandemic and economy. And we have Mr. Abhishek Anand with us, and I think he will be able to put light on various aspects of economic during the pandemic. We know we have gone through a lot because of the pandemic, and it has impacted our lives at various levels. And he will be able to put light on the microeconomic level as well as on the macroeconomic level. And we have been hearing a lot about V-shaped growth, or U-shape, or W-shape economic growth. So let us hear from Mr. Abhishek Anand, and I really welcome him from on part of Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies, our chairperson, Professor Siddharth Mishra, all the faculty members and students. And I think with Mr. Abhishek Anand, we are going to have long association. So we welcome you, sir, to this session to address our students and engage with us. Thank you so much.
Sir, ma'am, also give me the chance to introduce our guest. Coming on to our esteemed guest, Mr. Abhishek Anand, who is currently the partner at one of the fastest growing PR companies, Slough PR. He has more than 16 years of experience in journalism and corporate communication and public relations put together. He started his career with Pioneer newspaper and subsequently worked with publications like Finance Express, Finance Chronicle, and Mint newspaper, writing and reporting extensively on the happenings of Indian economy and business. Later on, he switched to the other side of the table and worked with the leading PR firms and corporate houses. To his credit, he has successfully managed some challenging PR campaigns, including that of Tata Group and Madhya Pradesh government, which provided him a 360 view of the communication industry. As such, he is well versed with various corporate requirements and approaches. An economics graduate from University of Delhi, Abhishek sir has also successfully handled political campaigns of some of the leading political figures, which has enhanced his understanding of socio-political issues. We welcome you, sir.
Thanks, Dr. Charulata. It's an honor to be part of this distinguished panel, which besides you has Siddharth Mishra and other distinguished faculties attending it. I also like thank the students. I'm hopeful that my session will be fruitful and knowledgeable for them. Whatever have been said about me, I have been like you all, I'm also a student of economics basically. So yes, I have written on economic and business subjects in various newspapers, including the reputed ones like Financial Express, Financial Chronicle, and Sun Times. But as we always do in our day-to-day life, we keep on learning every day from the experiences that we gain from day-to-day basis. So it is really a privilege that I have been given this opportunity to interact with young minds like you. I'm sure the bright minds will taste me, my knowledge as well, and I will be able to share my views on the interesting subject of pandemic and economy and its impact on various sectors like stocks, oil, gold, and agro markets. So basically, the way I'm planning to structure this is I will give you basically a sense of what has happened during the pandemic. We'll share a small PPT as well, and we'll be open to discussions and questions on every of those subjects. If you wish, we can do it in part-wise or maybe at one go at the end of the session. So, to begin with, if you look at the way the pandemics saved. So the pandemic actually started happening, say, towards the end of November. The China reported its first case then. As far as India is concerned, we registered our first case in India was noted on 30th of January. But in effect, actually, the pandemic we started noticing on a day-to-day life only towards the end of February, and in the initial phase of March, we basically started realizing that pandemic will impact all of us. It is there to impact, and this is how government and other agencies got activated. I remember, if I'm correct, on 2nd of March in Delhi, Delhi government came with these guidelines. They shut down all the schools and education institutions. So that was the beginning. So that was the indication of things to come. On 25th March, as you know, 22nd March, Janta curfew was like announced, and post that the entire economy was brought to a shutdown, basically lockdown on 25th of March, somewhere around that. So as always, like any pandemic will have repercussions on two fronts. One is, of course, the health. It is really a pity that so many of lives have been lost, not only in India, but across the world. The other impact was, of course, on the economic front of it. And today's topic and today's section is basically to discuss and interact about the kind of impact that we have. So, so as the topic suggests, it's like pandemic and economy and its impact on stock, oil, gold, and basically agro commodity. I would like to share basically a small PPT. So that will give you a gist of what has happened during that pandemic. And then we will take questions and interact apart from that. So if I can just share one PPT with you. I hope it's visible to everybody.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So as the basically the topic is it's a very interesting topic, and I would like to address it to the best of my knowledge and my experience. The pandemic and the economy and its impact on Indian stock market, oil, gold, and agro markets. So let's start with what happened. What is the impact of the pandemic as far as the economy is concerned? So India's GDP basically contracted by 7.3% in 2020-21. This is one of the sharpest fall ever registered by Indian economy. Before that, Indian economy registered a recession, or rather a contraction, that was way back in 79-80, when the economy basically contracted by 5.4%. That happened because of the oil shocks. This time it happened because of the pandemic thing. The size of Indian's economy, which stood at basically 145 trillion in 2019-20, that came down to 135 trillion in 2020-21. So basically, instead of growing, we contracted. The GDP, I must say that a year before that, the GDP in 2019-20 grew by about 4%. Again, that was say an 11-year low. But just before the pandemic, there was a signs that economy is coming back on track. There were initial signs that things are improving. But then we had pandemic, and everything basically went topsy-turvy. So the first quarter, on 25th of March 2020, the lockdown was imposed. So the impact, the adverse impact was at its peak during April and June, basically between April-June quarter of 2020. There, the contraction of GDP was as high as 24%. In subsequent quarters, as we unlocked many of the things, all the services, offices, and other things, apart from, say, some of the sectors like education sector has not been open till date in a full capacity or something like that. But in Q2, Q3, Q4 of the financial year 2021, we started recovering a bit, but the impact, the major severe dent was done in the Q1 itself, where the economy contracted by 24%. As a result, overall, the Indian economy basically shrank by 7.3%. But so it will be very interesting to see that it's clearly that Indian economy is performing very badly. But what was the world economic scenario? So even the world economic scenario was nothing to boast about. In 2020, we follow basically a financial calendar from April to March. The world over, it's like basically January to December kind of pattern that they follow. So if you look at the 2020 growth figures of the world economy contracted by 3.3%. Europe was majorly hit, was another basically part of the world which was badly impacted. For instance, like UK economy shrank by 9.9%, France economy fell by 8%. On the other hand, if you look at US, it fell by a little less, it fell by 3.5%. There was only one exception as far as major economies are concerned. And that the exception was, of course, China. China, instead of contracting, it grew by 2.3%. So if you compare China's growth from a year, say in 2019, of course, there was a slowdown here as well. But the slowdown was not much. In fact, it contracted, but it did not went into negative territory. It did reported some kind of growth. So then that brings to a question that which are the sectors that got worst hit in 2021? So let me be very open about this. And every sector of the economy underperformed. Every sector, barring one, and that sector was agriculture. So it's only a case of highlighting that which sector underperformed the worst in that scenario. So it was basically the contact-sensitive, intensive sectors and MSMEs. They felt the burn the hardest. Hotels, restaurants, tourism sector, aviation ancillary, tour and travel, they all went through a torrid time in 2021. Even today, they have been recovered, to the levels of 2019 or so. Sectors like event conferences was also hit. Manufacturing also got impacted because of various reasons, because of labor shortage, because of supply shortage of key raw materials and other things. And parts of services sector was impacted. IT sector was not impacted much, but some service sectors was definitely impacted. So what has been the impact of this economic slowdown if we analyze that? So it's very clear. Job losses was millions of people basically lost their job. Millions and millions of people. There are various estimates from one agency to another. Some agencies pegging at the loss is like 70 million job losses has happened in India. Some have pegged it even more. But there's no basically data from the government or any government agencies which throw some light on it. One of the estimates that CMI, the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, has basically shared, it says that the unemployment rate in India in the last is the highest in last decade. In the quarter when the lockdown was announced, the unemployment rate increased from 7.8% in March quarter to 17.8 in June quarter. So very clearly, one, there was job loss. Secondly, there was no jobs coming. The third thing that impacted was salary cuts. So salary cut was also very rampant across industry. Maybe select blue chip companies in India did not resort to that. I know certain IT companies even went and gave hikes, Same with some of the banks as well. But then those numbers are very far and few. Those can be counted on hand, like on fingertips. But something very important also took place. Like all this thing was bad for the economy as a whole. But there was a interesting thing that happened was the corporate profit. If you look, and I'm talking about when I talking about corporates, I'm talking about corporate. Those are listed on BSE and NSE. BSE is basically Bombay Stock Exchange. Now they have, of course, renamed themselves as BSE itself. So BSE and NSE. So all those companies who are listed there, if you analyze their results, then the corporate profit during 2021 zoomed as an average for most of the companies. So it was a very, very surprising and very, very interesting trend. Economy not doing well, people suffering, job losses happening, no job creation was happening, salary cut was rampant, yet the basically the profits of the companies were going up. I will come to that point, that what led to this, basically how the corporates managed to do well amid the pandemic. But before that, I will also like to highlight some of the things that which were the sectors were perhaps basically performed relatively better than most, or in fact reported some kind of growth as well. So one of them, as I mentioned, is clearly agriculture. In fact, that is the only sector which has done well. So it grew by 3.4% in 2021. So that is the only sector which actually reported positive growth. Then there are some sub-sectors of the economy which grow. So for instance, like education sector, we and you are like interacting here. But basically, like if you look at the reason we are interacting on online, because the schools and institutions haven't opened till now. So education sector too has been very, very badly impacted. But there are certain like segments within the education sector which has benefited. For instance, EduTech is one of them. The students, number of students with EduTech has increased multifold. Some say it's like 7 times, 8 times, 9 times. Others estimates it's like twice or thrice around that. For instance, I'm just giving a figure for Byju. This is courtesy one of the news reports of Economic Times. So it says that in Byju's, close to 45 million, that is 4.5 crore new students are using its app. So imagine the kind of success that these have got. There are certain other very exciting trends within the sector. Again, footwear did not do well at all. The sale of footwear fell like anything. But there were certain segments because of work from home, because people were confined to their homes, basically. It led to a sharp jump in some kind of sleepers, basically. So the sale of formal shoes dipped like anything. On the contrary, but because people were like for good 3 to 6 months, people were absolutely at home. So they basically the sale of slippers went up. So these are there are other segments as well. There are pockets of these, like the retail industry did not do well. But if you look at from a online retail point of view, this is the best time for them. They have gained market share over the last 1.5 years. They have been gaining market share anyway over the last few years. But this pandemic came as a blessing in disguise for them. And they have increased their say market share to a large extent. So there are very, very interesting things happening around the economy, though the economy as a whole is not doing well. Now, I'm coming back to the topic of why did the basically the corporate profit zoomed all this while. See, if you look at the corporate, how much it contributes to India's GDP and other things, so you will find that the share of corporate profit to India's GDP during 2021 was 2.69, close to 2.7 then. So basically, this is the highest corporate profit to GDP ratio that the country has reported in last 10 years. The lowest ratio was reported just a year before that. 2019-20 was a very, very bad year as far as the corporate profits are concerned. In fact, if you have seen the earlier basically slides, so it's very clear from there. Even in 2019, before the pandemic, the Indian economy wasn't down and basically down. So we grew by only just about 4%. So from a 7.5 kind of growth couple of years ago, in 2019-20, the growth was 4%. So it impacted the corporate profits to a large extent. So that is the reason that in 2019-20, the ratio of corporate profit to India's GDP was just 1.6. But in the pandemic year, it went up to 2.7%. So that just shows how the corporate profit has zoomed even in a not so great times for business. Just to say one more information as far as the corporate profit is concerned, that corporate profit vis-a-vis tax in ratio to India's GDP, 2010-11, it was at the highest of 3.2%. After that, it has been falling almost consistently till 2019-20. It went to 1.6%, and then there was a sudden jump in the pandemic year. So it makes a very, very interesting, like basically interaction, that what basically led to this kind of surge in corporate profit. So there are many reasons. So I've just listed few of them here. Slump in commodity prices. So in April 2020, the crude oil prices, international crude oil prices I'm talking about, went down to $21 barrel, which was its historic low. So when it is at its historic low, the prices of the commodity fell and it helped the business. The second element which basically benefited the business was lower interest rate. As you may be aware, in today's time, India's interest rate in Indian economy is one of the lowest. In fact, if you pick up some segments, like for instance, home loan, so the home loan rate is perhaps at its historic low. The last time when home loans were as low as around 7% or even below 7% was 2.34. After that, it was always like 8.5, 9, somewhere around that. But now it's like even below 7%. So interest rates are basically at its lowest. So that has basically helped corporates a lot. The third element which has helped them is cost cutting. As I mentioned, there have been the rationalization of workforce. So basically job losses has happened. There hasn't been many job creation. So hiring has been slow apart from certain segments like IT industry and other. Then because of offices, many companies did a wise decision from their perspective though, that once they saw that the pandemic is here to stay, this might take a very, very long time, say 1, 2 years, 3 years maybe. So they'll basically give up their office spaces. So they were able to cut down on rentals. They were able to cut down on basically all office expenses. They were able to cut down on travel expenses. So these cost-cutting measures also helped the corporates a lot. As a result of it, basically the corporate profits zoomed. Crude prices, as I mentioned, it fell down to $21 per barrel in April 2020. Metal prices again, like it also fell down. The prices of aluminum, the prices of steel, the prices of copper, everything became cheaper during the pandemic. However, if you look at from the second stage of pandemic, maybe toward the second half of, or maybe from the third quarter of the financial year 2021, things started to change. Because China was out of recession, China was starting to grow. The demand for commodities started surging, and again from October onwards, the commodity prices have started going up, and it is continuously going up. The crude, which was like $21 per barrel, is now around hovering around $70-$75 per barrel. So it has gone up like 3-4 times. So this is the summary of that I have given about this current topic. But as the topic is that what is the impact on basically the current economic scenario. So I will just like to give some highlight some data here that how is the current scenario panning out. So as far as the world economy, the global economy is concerned, IMF has projected that in 2021 we will grow by about 6%. This is about the global economy. Come back to India. So RBI has initially projected that Indian economy during 2021-22 will grow by 10.5%. But because of the second COVID wave, which came in March, April, and May this year, it later on basically revised its projection downwards to 9.5% growth for this in the current fiscal year. So clearly the signs are there that we will be reporting better growth as far as 2020-21 is concerned, but the robustness that was earlier expected is not there. Yet one thing is also clear: the second COVID wave has not impacted or jeopardized the economic activities to the extent that it impacted during the first wave. There are a few reasons. I will go into it while we discuss and answer the questions, but just to highlight one reason. One reason is very clearly because when the lockdown was announced on March 25th, March 2020, so basically we were not many of the companies were actually prepared for it. So it took little time for companies to adjust their strategies, build a platform, build a solution to it. But come second wave, we already had those systems in place. So while the life loss or the people who are no longer with us, the numbers have been much higher during the second wave of COVID, the economic impact of it is not that severe as was the case with the first wave of pandemic. This is let's go to the topic which is there, that we got a broad sense of how the economy is doing currently. It was doing very badly in 2020, particularly the first quarter between April June 2020. We went into negative of like 24%. Slowly we gradually basically resorted to in positive growth in the third quarter of the fiscal. We basically reported 0.05 kind of growth, and in the fourth quarter 1.6%. So, but overall the scenario was very bleak. We were in the negative territory of minus 7.3%. So in that scenario, what should the rationale of the stock market be? It is generally believed that stock market is basically the barometer of the economy. So when we say it's a barometer of economy, we believe that stock market knows economy much better than you and I do. It can sense, it can like feel what is likely to happen, say a couple of years down the line. Yet in a scenario when the economy was basically not faring well, the conception would have been that the stock market will go down. In fact, it happened that way. So in March, April 2020, the stock market actually fell from a level of 41,000 to close to 27,000. But the recovery was very, very sharp from April to the rest of the from May to rest of the months, like till March 2021, there was robust Sensex rise. So in fact, Sensex rise was one of the most phenomenal. From the lows of 27,000 in March, April 2020, we are now within a span of say 1 year and 3 months and somewhere around that, so basically 5 quarters, from 27,000 we have now hovering around 53,000. So which is a huge jump. This is a very surprising trend, but there are certain factors which is responsible for it. I will be coming to this, that what are the sectors which has led to such kind of fabulous recovery and fabulous return as well. Clearly, one reason which is there is lower returns on other asset class. Talking from strictly from an Indian, basically how India operates from Indian people's psychological point of view. So India's favorite asset, if you for investment, has always been fixed deposits. So most of the people keep their surplus money in banks' fixed deposit. Here, the catch is that because of the ample liquidity which government like infused, RBI infused in the banking system, the interest rates are at its historic low. So interest rates, both lending as well as basically borrowing rates. So you may be getting a cheap loan at a very, very cheaper rate, but at the same time, whatever surplus money that you put in the banks is also getting very, very lower rate. So the rates are hovering around 5%. On savings deposit is 3%. So 3%, 5% kind of return is not going to basically insulate you from the inflationary impact. That's why that is one of the reasons why there has been switch towards a different class. Gold has become too much expensive, so gold has not got that much of due. So what remains is real estate is again in trouble. So the only asset class which people basically trusted was stock market. As I have mentioned here as well, basically ample liquidity in the system has also mean that you get loans at a very, very reasonable rate. So your cost of, and even in the corporate profit slide, I have mentioned that even the corporates, one of the reasons why corporates profit zoomed was because the interest rate was lower. The same applies here. Because of ample liquidity as well as the lower rate of interest, people switched towards the equity part of it. Domestic institutions like LIC or other insurance companies and mutual fund, they have invested a lot of money in the stock market. It has also helped the stock market regain from its lows of 27,000, and in fact helped it cross its earlier level of 41,000, and today is now around 53,000, around that. In fact, many of the general masses, the common people like you and me, generally prefer to invest whatever we have via mutual fund. So mutual fund has been running a scheme like systematic investment plan. So what happens in a systematic plan, I'm sure most of us must be aware. So you invest, say, a X number of amount every month or every week or every fortnight, whatever be the frequency. So because of that SIP, the investment has always flowed into the market, and that has resulted into a surge. Earlier, what used to happen, if you look at any crisis prior to that, say 2008 crisis, or maybe East Asian crisis that happened in 97, 98, what used to happen is that the retail inflow, the retail basically means people like us investing in market, the retail inflows in market basically used to stop. It used to basically go down drastically. This time around, that has not been the case. That has not been the case. In fact, it has continued, and in some cases, this has also increased. So that has given a very, very basically that has hold the Sensex, and in fact, it has rallied because of that base effect and the strong foundation because of retail investment. FPI, which basically stands for foreign portfolio investment. So basically, that has also surged. In fact, India despite not doing that great as far as economic and GDP growth is concerned, this year, I'm talking from January 1 to till date, is one of the largest receivers of FPI investment in stock market. In fact, it's positioned as number third. Only two countries have received more foreign portfolio investment than us, is China and Brazil. Apart from these two countries, we have the highest inflow. So that is also leading to a kind of boom in the stock market. But here lies basically what we say is prudence. So there's a lot of talk. In fact, in one of the speeches, RBI governor did reflect on this point, how the markets are going crazy. He said it's like basically it's not justifying the or giving the correct picture of the real economy. So when a governor of RBI says this, then definitely it's time to have some caution as far as basically investment in stock market is concerned. I remember many of us too might be aware about it. During 2008-9 financial crisis that engulfed the entire world, India was relatively insulated then, but nevertheless, YB Reddy was then the governor of RBI. He, in his all policy statement that RBI came up, he always insisted that real estate is a bubble. That time, real estate was the best performing asset class. He always kept on cautioning the people. Few years down the line, we are seeing where the real estate is. Similarly, if today the RBI governor is saying the market is not reflecting the real economic scenario, it is time that we adopt some caution. There is some kind of craziness also going about. There are many smaller companies whose valuation have zoomed manifold. They actually do not reflect that kind of valuation, justify that kind of valuation rather. Now, there's been a lot of talk which has been going around one of the companies which very recently listed on the stock exchange, that is Zomato. All of us know what Zomato does, but the fact is that Zomato has captured a huge market share, particularly in the urban areas, but it's still a company which is huge into losses. They are basically pumping money and burning money. They have not reported profit single year. So yet, when they came out with the IPO very recently, their IPO received an overwhelming response from various class of investors. In fact, it was oversubscribed many times. And when it listed finally on the stock exchanges, it listed at a premium of around 70%, premium of around 70%. So while if you talk from a perspective whether Zomato's valuation is justified or not, that's a different subject completely. There are a school of thoughts which says even Facebook and basically Amazon kind of company, when they started their operations, they were into huge losses. So many people are justifying it. But if you talk from the ace investors like Rakesh Jhunjhunwala or maybe some other who are basically known as the face of Indian investors in the stock market, they have been very negative about this. In fact, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala went on record saying that he will not subscribe to any such things because there's no scenario of when the profits will come. So all these basically, to summarize, all these suggest that there's a huge exuberance around the stock market, but that exuberance might be misplaced as well. It may not be justifying and basically mirroring the real image of the economy. Now, if I come to basically the next theme of it, which is like gold. As I mentioned, there are different class of investment that is there. So one, of course, is fixed deposit. We Indians invest and keep our surplus in fixed deposits. The second is equity, which we have already spoken about. And the third comes to our mind is gold. Now, gold is always basically considered as a safe haven. So what does safe haven means? Basically, even in the worst of scenarios, gold will not give you a very drastic negative return. Yes, there may be some scenarios that the return on gold might be little negative, but apart from one or two exceptional circumstances, gold have generally kept its value intact. It is one asset class which has in fact exceeded whatever the inflationary trends have been. So gold has always been considered as a safe haven, not only in India, but across the globe. In fact, many of the central banks, including RBI, including US Fed, including everybody, most of the banks even in UK and other European nations, even in China, they have been in gold. They have been buying gold continuously for last few years because it's seen as a safe bet. So so the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, even that too, gold emerged as one of the safest bet. So initially, when the markets went for a toss, market went down, say from the levels of 41,000 to 27,000. It was gold which basically gave a phenomenal return. It went up to a level higher than 52,000. Of course, now there has been a little bit of correction, and it's now hovering around 47,000, 48,000, somewhere around that. So, what has led to this basically this kind of scenario that initially the gold market, the prices jumped, and then it has basically come down a little bit from its all-time high. If you look at the scenario and study the case studies of all what happens gold vis-a-vis the equity or vis-a-vis the topic that we will come to next, which is crude oil. So it generally goes against the trend of equity market. So equity market, whenever it is down, so people look at some kind of investment tool where the money might be safe. In any pandemic, what happens, like generally most of the central banks pump in lot of liquidity, lots of money in the banking system. So as a result, what happens that the interest rate in the economy falls. So equity is falling, the interest rate is falling. So it does not it's not a very attractive proposition for people to invest it in fixed deposits. So it leaves with the people are left with very little other options other than investing in basically real estate and gold. Real estate in India has been suffering for last few years for its reason, perhaps it deserves as well. But so because of that, there was a surge in investment as far as gold is concerned, and that led to a jump in prices of gold from 40,000 levels to around 52, 53,000. But after hitting an all-time high, it has come back to a level which is like 47, 48,000. It has been hovering around that level for last 2-3 months now. So one of the reasons why this is happening, so basically there has been some kind of correlation between crude oil prices as well as gold. So whenever the crude starts increasing, the crude prices basically starts increasing, gold also starts increasing as well. So that was also one of the reason, but that gold went up to such a high extent. But now that the crude prices have just softened a bit, its impact is seen even on the gold point of view as well. The question which might be there in many of us mind that will the gold prices correct from the current level? Like it's very difficult to predict what will happen in the future, but since most of the central bank are basically investing into gold, right from Indian Central Bank to UK to US to Chinese to France and Germany. So most of the central banks are doing so. So chances of a very sharp correction from this level is very, very unlikely. Now let me give you a very brief bit about how what is the scenario as far as oil, that is basically I'm talking about from the perspective of petroleum prices. So as I've mentioned earlier as well, from $21 in April 2020, it is now around $70-$75 in international market. In Indian context, the pump prices of petrol is higher in most of the cities, have crossed rupees 100. This has never happened. This is the highest. But one of the reasons is not because of the prices, it's because of the tax that is levied both by the central as the state government on oil, on crude oil, has also been increased in last few years. So in fact, the government increased excise duty by about 50% a couple of years ago, when the prices was trading at a very low. Similarly, there has been instances of state government increasing duty on crude oil, so it has resulted into price hike. We are saying in most of the cities, the prices of petrol especially has crossed 100 a liter, is a record in itself. The demand for petrol outstripping as of now the supply have already risen 48% in 2021. OPEC, which is basically the organization for petroleum exporting countries, so they have decided not to reduce or ease supply, or basically not to increase supply, rather not to increase supply, and that has also cemented the prices of crude oil. But again, what happens to crude oil in basically what is the trend in the nearby scenario? Again, is a little difficult because crude oil is basically controlled by a couple of countries which are part of OPEC, mostly Arab nations. There are some oil segment even in the US. It also depends on a lot on the geopolitical scenario. So whenever there is some kind of tension brewing up in any of the countries, you will see the crude oil prices starts to going up. So that is also a scenario. So basically to say that which way the prices of crude might go from the current levels is difficult, but generally the belief is that it will remain at this level and may even go up a little further from the entire financial year. Now, I'm coming to the very important subject of agroeconomy. Now, agroeconomy, as I have mentioned in the past, earlier here, India's agriculture market is the only bright spot that has been there in the entire 2021. It is the only sector which reported positive growth of 3.4%. You take away agriculture sector, all other sector reported negative growth. There was only one which reported a very modest negative number, that was electricity, utility kind of, because there the growth was much. But if you leave these two sectors around, the Indian economy was down and out. So this is the scenario of the agriculture. The 2021 was a very good one. This time around as well, basically the scenario of agriculture is again very robust. There was a little bit of attention that crept in a month ago. The monsoon was not up to mark, but now there is a revival in the monsoon. The sowing has been good. In fact, it's almost at par with what has happened in the last year. So there is a belief that this time as well, the agriculture market will do well. But there are a couple of differentiation which we will talk whenever we start the question and answer, another discussion. So we will talk about that scenario, that what is the differentiation between this year's scenario and vis-a-vis the last year. We have abundance But there are a few very interesting things within the agriculture sector which is happening. So India, for last many years, have been very dependent on itself for food grain. So in that sense, we have become Atmanirbhar as far as rice, as far as wheat is concerned. But if we look from other perspective, spices again we are basically self-reliant. But if you talk about from edible oil perspective or pulses perspective, we are not. In fact, till 1995, India was one country which was exporting edible oils. The scenario changed after that, and today we are the largest importer of edible oil in the entire India, in the entire world. So while we have become self-sufficient as far as food grains is concerned, there is a lot of work that needs to be done on edible oil front. The scenario is pretty much similar on pulses front, though in 2015-16, when the prices of pulses surged and went on to touch 200 rupees a kg. After that, government as well as NAFED, which is the agency of government itself, so they took some kind of measure. They created a buffer stock for pulses. So as a result of that, the dependence of pulses have declined a little bit, but we are still like very recently we have imported masoor dal from a very neighboring country of India. So even on the pulses front, we are not self-reliant as well. But yes, the scenario is much better as compared to what we have say 4-5 years ago. So what needs to be done? So basically, there is an urgent need of buffer stock to be created. In fact, very recently in March, April, I was part of that particular conference wherein the NAFED CND was also there. So it was a conference which was organized by Edible Oil Association. So he suggested that there is a high time that, like we did for pulses, we need to create a buffer for edible oil as well. So whenever the prices are lower or at a time, see, basically agriculture is a seasonal thing. So in certain months you will find the prices go down. In certain months you will find generally the prices hardens. So he suggested that it's time that we also create a buffer stock as far as edible oil is concerned. We buy it when the prices are low and use it for our domestic consumption. That will basically help the country a lot. Perhaps it's the right prescription that he gave, and the country needs to take those measures on an immediate basis. Now, agriculture has been in news for other reasons as well. So one of the reasons we all know, we stay in and around Delhi. So there's a large farm agitation is going on. Now, while what is the trigger and how this happened is a different ball game altogether. But the fact is that the farm reforms which have been suggested is the need of the hour. They cannot be denying about it. All political parties promised this in their manifestos earlier. The only problem why this say the unveiling of this reform or has been met with such kind of resistance is because because of some kind of high-handedness perhaps the government displayed. Government did not take a position into account, though their manifestos also promised these reforms. But nevertheless, it is basically prudent on the part of the government to take a position along. This does not happen. And India is a very complex country, so there are many interests that work simultaneously. So that has many of the segments are basically against this bill. They have not been able to like pinpoint that what is the drawbacks apart from one or two basically drawbacks that they have pointed, but no major drawbacks have been pointed. Yet the Supreme Court has went ahead and basically has stalled the implementation of the reforms, agriculture reforms. but that is the need of the hour. We produce rice and grain almost 3 to 4 times than what we require on an annual basis. On the other hand, we basically import edible oil to a large extent, and to some extent pulses as well. If agriculture reforms happen, there is a large possibility that we will be able to meet our requirements of pulses for sure in very near future, and even for edible oil in the next few years. In fact, this year, if you look at the scenario of edible oils, mustard prices was hovering around 8,000 rupees per quintal, which is again one of the highest. One of the reasons is because of the shortfall of the oil. Basically, the emphasis that government is giving now on Atmanirbhar India in every form, including agriculture. So that has resulted in some kind of better compensation for farmers, but a lot needs to be done. Second thing is infra, the agriculture infra that we have, the storage, the cold storage and other things, that is very, very bad in India. It's not at all, nowhere comparable even to any developing nation. We have been talking about India-China comparison for last so many years, but we need to understand that the Chinese economy is much superior to Indian economy. In fact, I'm sure many of you must be aware about it. Chinese economy is roughly 5 times larger than Indian economy as on date. So whenever we compare China, India, we basically do not justify that. If you take infrastructure into account, including the agri infrastructure, the gap between the two countries is even more. So, so it's high time that we start developing agri infra. Agriculture bill, if implemented in right, earnest and manner, perhaps will help a country becoming Atmanirbhar on some of the segments, apart from wheat and rice, and as well as on upliftment of agri infra. So this is what is required. And now I will be very much open for questions on this now. So if you can please go ahead.
Yes, sir. We have a few questions with us. So shall I start?
Yeah, sure.
All right, sir. So as you said, in the second wave, there was less severe impact on the economy. But isn't it ironic that the cases went high, people got ill, and there was also a need of oxygen cylinders in that?
See, you're right. There are two impacts that the pandemic had. One on the health front, the other on the economic front. So what we discussed was the impact on the economic front. As far as the health front is concerned, we lost much more lives. Yes, the government has been in denial mode. It says they don't have any account that how many lives have been lost due to oxygen shortage or non-availability of oxygen. But the regardless of the fact is that there has been lots of life lost during the pandemic, of the second wave of pandemic. But if you talk from an economic point of view, then the scenario is different, because we were much more prepared, because we had systems in place, because we have been working from home for last 1.5 years. So we were prepared for it. So disruption which happened in the second wave was not this time around. While the first lockdown was imposed on a national wide scale, this time around it was states which imposed lockdown. On central level, the government did not impose any lockdown anywhere. So basically it was state specific lockdowns. So the impact of that lockdown on economy was not that high as if you compare it from the last year. I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Fine.
Yes, sir. The second question is, in this pandemic, the sector that was hit the hardest among the others was the airline industry. due to various travel bans of the automobile industry is still suffering. Amidst all of this, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has announced that he is looking to start his own airline company. So according to you, how much of a good decision is this?
See, if you look at from an investment point of view, so when do you invest in a stock market? You invest in a stock market when the prices of a stock at its low or nearer to a level which is at where you are comfortable investing in. So this is exactly the scenario here. Since the aviation industry is going through a very, very hard time, there are no takers for aviation stock. In fact, if I can recall one of the statements given by Warren Buffett just before the national lockdown was enforced in India into March 2020. So he said one of the sector in which he has no stocks as of now is aviation, because he don't see a future of aviation as a sector for next 2-3 years. So so that means basically the going has been very, very tough for aviation sector. It has not come anywhere near to what it was in 2019 or so. So this, in such a scenario, this is the right time, because you are able to infuse equity or buy an existing system at a much lower value than what you will get when the things are, or the market is at a very high. So I think with Rakesh Jhunjhunwala investing, he is considered an ace investor. So chances are that aviation industry will be seen that it will come to life very soon. The job which were lost might be like regained in about a year's time or somewhere around that. There's also a talk of selling Air India. Now that will be interesting to see how that goes. That will also impact the aviation industry in the times to come.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. So one question is, can you please enlighten us regarding the possibility of growth and non-fungible token and cryptocurrency with respect to Indian economy, considering that no legislative framework with respect to cryptocurrency
Yeah.
and NFT?
Yeah. Cryptocurrency is very interesting aspect. It is one of the new investment tool which basically many of the say generation next has adopted and have invested. But from a government standpoint of view, regulators standpoint of view, world over, they have not given any kind of backing to cryptocurrency. In fact, the matter went in Indian context, if you look, the matter went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court finally ruled that cryptocurrency, in fact, Indian government and RBI, the regulator of the currency in India, they ruled that it is illegitimate. It's basically illegal, the cryptocurrency in India. The matter went to court. The court said, no, you have to, it is not illegal. You need to basically come up with a framework in how the cryptocurrency can be like traded and people can invest into it. But so far, you're right. The crypto, there has been no bigger development. There has not been much development on that front. RBI recently said that they are not averse to cryptocurrency, but instead of allowing the people to invest in the cryptocurrency which are existing there, it's considering launching its own digital cryptocurrency. So if that happens, that will be a big say confidence booster to the entire cryptocurrency market. And that will take cryptocurrency to a greater heights, because the acceptability will increase. There are certain corporates which have started, like I know there are a couple of corporates even in real sector which are talking in basically light words at the moment, very lightly, that they are open for adopting cryptocurrency for selling of flats and other things. But officially, till now, nobody has done that. But if RBI comes up and say basically give a framework or launches its own digital currency, that will give that market a flip.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, in recent times, the Indian banking industry is facing various issues like NPAs, large overdues, and losses faced in various rural and suburban branches. Even after having these issues, Indians are investing in stocks of various banks. Why is it so?
Yeah. Now, this is a very a subject which is very close to my heart. As a journalist, I have covered this subject for a very long time. In fact, I used to write on banking and financial services. So it's basically in my the question is falls in my domain, which is a very interesting subject as well. So if you talk from a bank point of view, so clearly there are two kinds of banks. One is private banks, and then we have basically PSU banks, which we call PSBs, in fact, public sector banks. So in public sector bank, the problem started in 2007-8 during the financial crisis. The world over, there was a recession, but we, in our exuberance, kept on giving loans, allocating loans, which were not basically justifiable. In fact, it led to a large surge in NPA. When Raghuram Rajan came as a governor of RBI in 2012 or 13, somewhere around that, he identified the problem that there is a huge under-reporting of NPA going on. And he insisted that the NPA should be started with disclosing. The banks should be disclosing it on a much more agile basis. That has started happening, and even post Raghuram Rajan left, RBI and other governors took place. The process was still much in place. So banks basically started disclosing their NPAs on a transparent basis, as in comparison to what was happening earlier. So the NPA level of the banks went up drastically. But what is the difference now? So if you see the credit growth, which is basically what is a term that we use on the loans that basically banks give to individuals, to corporates and other segments. So the credit growth of the banks in last few years has been in single digit. The reason being because the public sector banks, especially the government-owned banks, were not in a very great shape. So they were not lending. Now, because they were very slow on lending to people as well as corporates, that has worked as a blessing in today's scenario. So if they have lended in, say, in a very, very substantial way earlier as well, as they were doing in 2007-8, the NPAs would have shot up many times. But that has not happened because of the prudent, basically, the approach that the banks have adopted recently. The NPAs have fallen down, and that's why we are seeing a surge in banking stocks. And people are basically have started taking and buying up PSU bank stock. The other reason is that government has already announced that they will be like privatizing two public sector banks. There are 4 public sector banks which is on radar for privatization. There are 2 banks which are almost on the verge of being privatized, which is Central Bank and Indian Overseas Bank. What has happened in April, May.
Continue.
As what we have seen in April, May, the economy, even despite all local level, lockdowns that states imposed, but the economy was not impacted to that extent as it was in a year ago in 2020 as such. So we have the systems in place. So even if the third wave is arrived, we will not be that much of impacted. Plus, the medical infrastructure, which was earlier there, that is also being augmented. Like I think most of the states, even at the center, are now setting up oxygen plants and other stuff. So the impact of third wave, I don't personally see that impacting, even if it arrives to that extent, both the health sector as well as the economy point of view. So economy may be doing much better. It may not be doing, say, like we may not be able to achieve, say, 9.5% kind of growth, which RBI is projecting, but certainly we will grow by 8.5% kind of thing in this financial year. That is my opinion.
Yes, sir. The next question is, if only 4% are investing in the economy, what if another 16
Pardon,
or
I did not get
20%?
it.
All right. Sir, are you able to hear my voice?
Yeah.
All right. If only 4% are investing in the economy, What if another 16 or 20% invest? Won't the stocks that are limited be affected by a demand supply and share market will boom?
Uh, Now, it's another very interesting aspect. I think this data is little older. This data is like 3-4 years old. So you will be surprised to know that the Indian stock market, only 500 odd accounts, that is 499 to be precise. In fact, they constitute about 99% of the trading that happens in Indian stock market. So whichever they tilt, the stock market actually tilts that way. So if the institutions are investing, the stock market will go up. It has been this scenario typically, but last couple of years there has been one change which is to be noted, and that is that retail investments in form of mutual fund has surged. Mutual fund has been getting record inflows over the last 2-3 years, so that have given some kind of basically support to the market. Secondly, it may not be classified as a retail investor or a direct fund, because mutual fund at the end of the day is seen as a institutional thing. But since it is the individuals like you and me who are investing in mutual fund, so that is also like a lot of retail investors are participating not directly but indirectly into the market.
I think
Muskan, are you
there are
at-
no more questions.
Yeah, I think you should start. We can take up the questions and get, we can send them to the speaker, and we
All right,
can
ma'am.
get the answers later.
Okay, so we would like to thank you, sir. And we would like Professor Siddharth Mishra to take up now. Professor Siddharth Mishra is a print. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can leave that.
All right.
So, first of all, thank you so much, Abhishek, to have found the time on a busy day.
So it's a pleasure and privilege to addressing
Yeah.
say intellectual minds like
Much
which
grateful
you
to
are
you.
part of it.
I think I gave you a very detailed task to cover almost all the markets of Indian economy. And people no
So
business
your
journalist.
voice is not audible, sir.
I think I made it. I threw a challenge at you to address. Is everybody? Am I audible to others?
Yes.
Little better, but it's still not very audible, sir.
But there is a problem at your end. So what I was saying is that it's not easy for even a business journalist to cover so many markets.
Right.
India has so many markets, and if somebody is an agriculture agro market reporter, somebody is a stock market reporter, somebody is, so it's for one single individual to cover so many markets is a very, very challenging task. It must have been a very challenging task for you, and I'm very so grateful to you to have delivered this lecture today. And plus you kept it very simple, because I think you rightly realize that these are first year students who are
So your voice is not audible, sir.
so that's your problem again. So what I was trying to say is that
Just hold for a second. I will just get my headphones, sir. So perhaps that will make it better. Just hold for a second, sir. Or you may continue, sir.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that now will not interrupt me, because I lose my thought process. So the point I was trying to make is that these are first year students, and it was very important for them to get introduced to the whole idea of business journalism, to economic journalism, and you kept it simple. That's very, very important. There are a few things which I want to share with them. In the course of your lecture, you mentioned about we having our financial year from 1st April to 31st March. Now, this is a colonial hangover. The question which must have arisen in your mind is, why do we do it this way? Because this is a colonial hangover. Because in England, when we were part of the British Empire, they would pass their budget at the end of the year. And from that budget, allocation would be made for Government of India. And thereafter, then we would plan our budget and deliver our budget. So that's how this 3 months gap has been. But then our accounting process has also got now used to that. So despite several attempts in the past, we are still to go to same financial year and same calendar year mode. So this is basically why we do it on 1st of April, start our financial from 1st of April. This is the colonial reason. In fact, one of the other thing which was there, which we have done away with, पहले हमारे यहाँ बजट जो था पार्लियामेंट में शाम को 5 बजे प्रेजेंट होता था. वो इसलिए शाम को 5 बजे प्रेजेंट होता था कि क्योंकि इंग्लैंड में, लंदन में, वेस्टमिनिस्टर में जो उनकी पार्लियामेंट थी, उनकी गवर्नमेंट थी, वो सुबह अपने टाइम से 11 बजे बैठती थी. तो उनके लिए, उनके कंजम्पशन के लिए हम 5 बजे करते थे when this telegraph messages would reach them in the ship. Now that we have done away with. Now we have our budget presentation. Till about 10-12 years back, we were having our budget presentations at 5 o'clock in the evening. Now it is done at 11 o'clock in the morning, as soon as the parliament meets on that day. So this was something important which I thought I would bring to your notice. Abhishek has mentioned about what you call, stock market being the barometer of economy. There are some people who disagree with that. At one point of time, when Mr. Chidambaram was our finance minister and our stock markets were doing very well, so he had said that stock market are a barometer of our economy. And at that point of time, Mr. Arun Jaitley, who was leader of opposition, has cautioned him against that. And in fact, those who follow Indian economic history would recall that soon after that, the stock market started falling for various reasons. Cases of corrections came out and other. So you see, stock market, economy, these are just not dependent on economic factors. There are certain social factors also which are responsible for it, the way the market behaves. Plus there are perceptions. There are perceptions, people get, in the anticipation of a law being made. There's so many things which affect a stock market functioning. But largely, if the economy is good, so even if there is a fall in the stock market, it recovers very well. It recovers very quickly. Like if you saw this year, the gold market, if you saw this year, the gold market, all of a sudden, they slipped for about, some time by about 10,000 rupees. But it recovered within fortnight's time. It was back to around 55,000 rupees. It has slipped to about 45,000 rupees. So that in some way reflected about the solid state of our economy. Now, the solid state of our economy also has been because we have not been very dynamic economy in past 1.5 to 2 years for the various reasons for which he has enumerated. जब पैसा इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, फिर उसमें लॉस होता है, प्रॉफिट होता है, रिटर्न आता है, भी आ जाता है समवेयर, गो स्लो करते हैं लोग, course correction करते हैं. So these are some of the things which he brought. If you were to ask me individually how I see the economic this thing of last 1.5 to 2 years, I feel it has been the period, the best period, the golden period for the startups. You should have had the skill, you should have had the intelligence to understand how to address the situation which was prevailing. One of the best examples of that has been, as he mentioned, has been Byju's, which has grown by leaps and bounds. 45 million app users. And Byju's are not the only one in the market. There is Vedantu, there is Great Learning, and there is Time, there is Unacademy, there are so many of them today. So, and some of them, but Byju's was a startup, so were somewhere else, and they have done so very well. So because they could foresee कि ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन पे जाना है, फटाफट उसकी तैयारी उन्होंने उसका अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट किया. Investment not as in only financial investment, but investment also in the terms of what you call intellectual investment. And they have reaped a very, very rich harvest of that. As in the case of Zomato also, which could again foresee that there's going to be a lockdown, but people would need food to eat, and the companies like and in fact one of the charges against Mr. Narendra Modi government is that the only employment he has given to people are the Zomato and the Swiggy food delivery boys and nobody else. So, but why only Swiggy and Zomato? Even there is a big basket, there is even Grofers. They all have grown by multitude. In fact, here I would like to bring to the knowledge of people that one other market which has grown by leaps and bounds is the online pharmacy market. In the last, when we talk of economy, when we talk of business, there is something called acquisitions and mergers. You know, when a startup does well, where does it go from there? You know, stakes are bought in them by the big companies. They try and buy stakes in that company and try and take over that company. And two of the major acquisitions and mergers which have been there in past 1 year has been one of Big Basket by Tata's. And Tata's did it because this Flipkart was taken over by another of this thing. So Tata's, you know, wanted to create a rival this thing chain. So it took over Big Basket. And the other one, which has been most recent, very recent, a company whose name was not even heard about 12, 15 months back. A company which never gave an advertisement on the what you call television or anywhere. And that company has grown so much that Tata's have bought it today. That company is called 1mg. It's an online pharmacy dispensation. So if anybody has been using the 1mg app, you will find that now it's called Tata 1mg. So this lockdown, you know, as see, whoever writes speeches for Mr. Narendra Modi, he gives a lot of thought to, you know, it's another matter that how do people take it. But even he said ki, you know, aapda mein afsar. So a lot of people realized what were the opportunities and they made best use of it. And as I mentioned to you, economy-wise, you know, the companies like Zomato तो काफी discussion में आ गया. Zomato क्योंकि वो stock market में गया, IPO उसने खोला और grey market ये वो, तो you know sensational कहानियां बिकती हैं. लेकिन 1mg का इतना बड़ा acquisition हुआ, इतना बड़ा merger हुआ, क्योंकि उसके अंदर कोई sensationalism नहीं था, कोई grey market नहीं था, कुछ नहीं था, वो कहानी नहीं बनी. But I think 1mg acquisition has been a much bigger story, financial story than the what you call a Zomato story. And you see, it has changed the way pharmacy is functioning in this country. You see, today the cost 20% discount on medicine, unthinkable. 20% discount on the way medicine is delivered at your home. No grey market of medicine, only against prescription. No grey market delivery. 20% discount. So the customer had to, and then this also makes you realize कि हमारा जो फार्मेसी इंडस्ट्री है वो कितने पैसे बना रहा था. जब हमें वो 20% डिस्काउंट एमआरपी पे वो दे रहा है 1mg, तो आप सोचो कि वो 10-15% तो बचाता भी होगा, 10-15% खर्चा भी करता होगा, तो अबाउट 50% डिस्काउंट पे उसको मेडिसिन मिल रहा था और हमारे दुकानों में डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स इन पा रहा है. So that is how they brought in certain element of honesty in their this thing. उन्होंने प्रॉफिटेरिंग को कम किया, वो जो कहते हैं होर्डिंग को कम किया, और आप उसका फायदा देखिए that they were able to, today they have the biggest online what you call pharmacy company in the country. As far as continuing on that bit, employment की जो बात हुई, it is not only employment for people that the charge with the political rivals bring in against Mr. Modi of employment in form of food delivery boys. But not to forget, a large employment has also come in the way of people who were skilled by way of jobs on this online learning platforms. I know several young minds like you who were very well educated, especially the foreign companies, Great Learning, Great Lakes University, all these companies. If you were intellectually sound and if you were academically good, I think घर बैठे आपको 60-70 हज़ार रुपए महीने की नौकरी मिल गई. तो आपको जो एक बात जो मैं हमेशा कहता हूं कि स्किल अपग्रेडेशन, you have to keep improving your skill and you have to keep realizing that the scenario is changing very fast and employment will be available to people who are skilled. And there are examples of that. It may not be part of the popular narrative, but these are the reasons. Again, popular narrative and business narrative are two different things. Popular narrative, what we read in the popular newspapers, and business narrative, which is seen, in popular narrative, you have the social quotient is very high, but in the business narrative, that is hardly, looked at. What is looked at purely from the point of business feasibility. So, like when Abhishek talked about need for agriculture reforms. So as soon as he talks that, one should realize that he's talking about implementation of the 3 laws which are pending as of. The agitation, the Kisan, it is directly connected to the Kisan Andolan, Kisan agitation, which we are seeing. Now, how many of you actually, this is the job of, again, you as communication. It is for you to look at the demands of the farmers, not only by the way YouTubes are showing. It is, if we are only carried away by the speech of a illiterate, uncouth Rakesh Tikait, then we are not good journalists or people of mass communication. We should go beyond that. We should read Economic Times. We should read Financial Express. We should read, there are so many other portals which are talking about it. There are portals which are specializing on agriculture matters. We should read that and try and realize that what you call, how the two are related, how the two are connected. We should not get carried away by popular perceptions which are being created by present day media. Something which Mr. Satpal had also insisted yesterday, that we have to give ourselves a pause and look at it from different perspectives, and just not get carried away by the narratives which are running in the market. I think with these words, I thank you. I thank the faculty members, the dean, the organizers of the anchors, Muskan, Niharika, and of course, Abhishek, for having found time and having come here and talk to the students. And I'm very sure that the faculty members will give you some good assignment to write on what Abhishek has told you today. Thank you so much.